Sheffield Wednesday secured themselves a lifeline in their bid for survival on Saturday afternoon with a 2-0 win at Loftus Road against an all-too complacent QPR side. And with Huddersfield, Plymouth Argyle and Stoke City all picking up points this weekend, it's a result that has cut QPR's 6-point gap to safety to 4. So let's break down this performance, and if you enjoy the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe as well. Now, after our miracle rise over Easter weekend, life had started to feel a lot more positive as a QPR fan. Our gap to safety had risen from 1 to 6 in just 2 matches. Martí Cifuentes was continuing to impress with his tactical nous, and Ryan Dilks of the Second Tier podcast was starting to crack at the signs of our survival looking more likely. But of course, we should know as QPR fans that we can't have nice things. Maybe Briatore was right about Jude the Cat after all, because our downwards turn from the highs of last weekend seemed to start with the news of his dismissal as a result of claims that he was flirting with female fans. Never a quiet day at QPR, is there? Cifuentes had it right on Friday when he warned that the biggest mistake we could make is to think the job is done. We have 46 points and we know this will not be enough. And I must admit, I thought he was right again with the team selection when I saw that at 2 o'clock. On paper, this really looks to me more or less the strongest starting 11 that we could have put out, though Colback and Frey's omissions from the squad through injury were ominous. And I have to say, before kick-off, I was really pleased to see that Armstrong was back in the starting lineup. After Dykes' invisible showings and Frey looking really off the mark since the international break, I've been really hoping for Armstrong to come in and make that shirt his own. He's our only centre forward who makes runs in behind, he pins the defence back, he stretches the game, and I thought that would be really suited to the physicality of Wednesday's defence. For the first 5 to 10 minutes of the match, I thought that the call looked to be justified. Armstrong was getting lots of channel balls and he was being a nuisance down the flanks. He worked himself into a good position when he received Chair's delivery from a break on 12 minutes, a much better one than the tight angles we normally see him approach goal from, but his shot was too weak to test the keeper. But I'm afraid to say it went rapidly downhill from there, not only for Armstrong but for Rangers in general. With both of his knees strapped up this time, Sinclair just didn't look up for the battle with Sheffield Wednesday's number 5 and 6. He was regularly picking the ball up down the wings but just wouldn't beat his man. In one bizarre moment on 17 minutes, he collected the ball down the right and would have had a completely open box to run into if he just tried to beat Diaby. Instead, he stuttered, slowed the ball down, and then gave the ball away with his first touch. The weirdest part is, despite Willock collecting the loose ball, Armstrong seemed to just drop his shoulders and start walking off into the box, not looking at where Willock was, leaving him to blast the ball well past the post. And Armstrong's performance got weirder and weirder from here. Despite our midfield constantly looking to pump the ball to him and Begovic searching for him from goal kicks, he didn't jump for a single ball against their centre-backs. He was limping after 20 minutes and I really wouldn't have been surprised to see Marty hook him before half-time. And sadly, it wasn't just our centre-forward that wasn't at the races yesterday. Despite Marty warning that the job wasn't done, this message clearly wasn't received by this team. And from 20 minutes or so in, the momentum shifted the way of Wednesday. They had complete freedom in midfield, with elder statesman Barry Bannon free to spray the ball around the pitch at his leisure, unhindered by our centre mids. And though Sheffield Wednesday's play was cluttered and far from perfect, it led to clearer chances than anything QPR produced. On 24 minutes, they looked certain to go up when Powell gave Ian Poveda far too much space. He floated a delicious ball to the back post that had Begovic well out of sight, and all Winders had to do was connect with it, but bizarrely his touch put the ball straight across the face of goal. QPR were let off in both ways when Poveda had to leave the pitch with a hamstring injury 5 minutes later. They cut for us far too easily again, with Gassama free to have a shot at goal, but he put his effort wide of the post. QPR produced very little by way of response other than a Chair long shot going wide. I can't remember the last time one of those tested the keeper, and a Steve Cook header from a corner which could have opened the scoring had he made a better connection. Unfortunately, I think this is one of the rare occasions where Martí Cifuentes had been outsmarted by Danny Rowe. We are very heavily reliant on our wing play. I spoke about the need to go down the middle against Birmingham, and Rowe neutralised this by putting 2 centre-backs high on the wings and stopping us playing through them. Couple that with a high press and there was just no way of playing through Sheffield Wednesday other than balls over the top to Sinclair Armstrong, who just didn't look up for it. That said, our attackers in general just didn't look too interested. It was as quiet a performance as I've seen from Anderson. Chair still looks like he's struggling given that he's still fasting, and Willock was invisible. And unless he's agreed to commit his future to the club beyond the summer, part of me does wonder why we're still handing him starts when he could be walking for free in a month's time. Changes were desperately needed at half-time, but they just didn't come. It's the part of Marty's game that I can never predict. Sometimes he's very proactive in making changes. In others, he likes to see how the game plays out in the second half. But unfortunately, this wasn't a game where we could afford that luxury, and I thought Sinclair at the absolute minimum needed swapping. And of course, nothing did change with the team staying the same. We created very little of note in the first 20 minutes and Barry Bannon was still dictating play in the middle. Wednesday got more and more physical, constantly fouling Armstrong, not that the ref cared. But I can't blame them because they just did what they needed to do to get the 3 points. Our defending for Wednesday's first goal on 59 minutes perhaps best summed up our disjointed performance. Yorfa easily poked the ball past Powell on the wing, who made no effort to make up for his mistake. And Gassama carved his way through the box past Field and Jake Clark-Salter before cutting the ball back, which was initially blocked by Isaac Hayden, but his attempted clearance was blasted into the shins of Gassama and it trickled into the back of the net. Now, it can often take this QPR side to go a goal down to remember that they're actually a football team, but you just knew that Wednesday were not going to give the lead up easily and the response was nowhere near the levels that we've seen in the past. 6-foot Armstrong finally beat his man on 65 minutes and looked to run into the box, only to be slide tackled by 5-foot Bannon in what could have been a very clear chance. And if that isn't a damning indictment of his performance, then I don't know what is. But the resulting corner did lead to our clearest chance of the match. Anderson's initial delivery into the box didn't threaten, but Willock's ball back to the other side of the box would lead to Chair eventually teeing Anderson up for a shot, one that would loop over and beat the keeper before rattling the woodwork. And at this point, you just knew we were not coming back. Marty's triple sub on 70 minutes was far too late and it only served to confuse things further. Dykes came on for Isaac Hayden, Smith for Jake Clark-Salter and Fox for Powell, meaning Willock shifted into the middle and we set up with something much more like a 3-5-2. It seemed to benefit Anderson dropping into a bit of a deeper position, something more like Bannon was playing, but we just didn't muster anything as near as his effort. Dykes' sole contributions were a yellow card and a handball, although I was impressed that the ref managed to see that after missing so many fouls during the second half. There were a couple of QPR efforts, but nothing to get you out of your seat. And if Sinclair Armstrong being replaced by Albert Adoma on the 93rd minute wasn't confirmation enough that this match was over, Wednesday's second goal, with Gassama playing a simple through ball into the box for Masaba to blast into the roof of the net on 96 minutes, did. I get it, you can't win them all. The form has been so good over the last couple of months. But it's just the nature of the performance that we put in that's really done it for me. The whole team just looked like they couldn't be bothered and they so clearly think that the job is already done. I've talked a lot about Sinclair's performance in this video, but the whole team didn't drop anything above a 2 or 3 out of 10, maybe with the exception of Sam Field. Lost for Words has talked a lot about the fact that with this QPR side, there's always a performance like this hiding just beneath the surface, and it's so true. I guess when the last 2 wins were solely won by goals from defenders, this was always going to come at some point because our forwards just can't score. They have 10 goals between the 3 of them for the entire season. Armstrong hasn't scored since Leicester in March. Frey hasn't scored since Norwich at home in February, and Lyndon Dykes hasn't scored since Watford in January. And that all goes back to the club allowing us to start the season with only Dykes and Armstrong up front. And it's something that's punished us right until the very end of the season, even with the miracles that Marty has worked. And none of our attacking midfielders are contributing anymore either. Chair and Willock just aren't effective in front of goal at the moment. I think for me, this result has really kind of crashed us back down to earth after last weekend. And it's a reminder of how much work needs to be done to this squad over the summer, regardless of what league we're in, because this team can't continue to function with the lack of goals that it has for the last 2 to 3 years. Marty has taken the blame for the performance in his post-match interview. I think that more goes down to not wanting to hang the team out to dry with just 5 matches left, because we all know how they respond to that kind of treatment. Hopefully it's the wake-up call that we need, because with the gap now cut to 4 points, we could find ourselves in a very sticky position if we lose to Plymouth Argyle on Tuesday night. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you have any thoughts about the performance yourself, do let me know in the comments below, and do hit like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video as well. I'll be back tomorrow with my Plymouth Argyle preview, so I'll see you then. Cheers!